probably one in Little Creek where General Bailey showed up in helicopters outside the conference hall, and quite an entrance and exit for that matter.
I had the distinct pleasure of attending in 2008 and 2012 the NNOA conferences in Portsmouth, Virginia, and New Orleans. We had nothing but great feedback from this event, and it was very insightful for those aspiring go-getters.
Was when we were able to pay tribute to the late legendary Captain Parham as I served as the National Chaplain. Indeed, that was an honor that I will always be most grateful for, because it was during the forum of the symposium when we then had the Parham lectures that I was able as the National Chaplain to help plan a tribute to Captain Parham. So with that, I have an attitude of gratitude, and indeed it is with an honor that I'm here to say greetings to all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful time at this symposium. Thank you, God bless you, and with an attitude of gratitude.
Oh Lord, prepare me, be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving.
Good morning, sir.
Good.
Sanctuary.
All right, can you all, good morning, sir. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am, we can. I can.
Okay, awesome.
Captain Wright, got you loud and clear. Good morning, Admiral Harris. You're looking great, guy.
And you do as well. I'm glad you found a tie.
Found a tie. I got a few in the box. Okay.
We should let you, sir, open up with the solo moment.
Oh, no. As my mother told me as a young boy, when I thought I was making a gleeful noise unto the Lord, she looks down at me and says, son, God knows you love him. You don't need to.
I know that feeling. My family tells me that all the time. That was the one gift I did not get. I guess my mother says, she said, you can't have all the gifts, kind of, not all of them.
Hey, well, before we begin, I see one of my shipmates. Is that you, Boomer Smith?
That's me, Sink. How you doing, bud?
Hey, I'm doing better for seeing you, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, and looking for a successful NNOA symposium. Appreciate your leadership.
Hey, well, I appreciate
I'm going to
you.
spotlight the chaplain because it's her session.
Okay, chaplain, over to you, ma'am.
All right, good morning and welcome to the 49th Annual Symposium. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I am Chaplain Takana Jefferson, the National Chaplain, and I am here to bring you your motivational moment, which comes from Psalm 121, verses 1 through 8. And it reads as follows from the NIV. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand, and the sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and your going, both now and forever. This psalm is one of many of the psalms written by King David, and my favorite, especially when faced with life challenges and uncertainties. There is some discussion among theologians if the scripture text or song was written as the soldier song meaning it was used to prepare David for battle, trusting that God will protect him as
Hey,
God is his
Captain Wright, have you
refuge
seen
and
Captain
strength.
Cox
Some theologians believe it is nothing more than merely
as
a
of late?
traveler's song, praying for safety and travels along the way, that no harm will come to those who are on their specific
Second
destinations.
crisis.
Now, I think whether you are going into battle, as many of us military do, or whether we are traveling our everyday life, be it physically or spiritually, there are nuggets in which we all can derive from this text. Understanding by lifting our eyes unto the hills can translate in staying focused on our goals and the path that God has specifically designed for each and every one of us. And asking the question, where does my help come from? We must remain confident in knowing that we are not alone. No matter what situations arise in our life, no matter the obstacles that are presented before us, if we stay focused on our path and not swaying to the left or to the right, but stand flat-footed, realizing our help comes from God. The battle is already won, because if God be for us, then who can stand against us? If God is our protector, the maker of heaven and earth, the God who never sleeps, then why are we worried about life's situations? There is no need to fear or to worry, because we already were told in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And David is here reassuring himself that if God has not left him in the past, then why would God leave him now? If God again is the creator of heaven and earth and did it all in 6 days and rested on the seventh, then why can't God work out our problems and fix our situations? If God can look after an entire nation and keep them safe 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, and God is never sleeping, then that means while I'm sleeping, God is busy lining everything up just for me. God is ensuring that the doors that need to be opened are open, and the doors that need to be closed are closed. We have to understand that when the weapons form, which they will not be able to prosper. Why? Because God is our shade by day and our sun by night. God will direct our steps, for we know that the righteous steps of a person are ordered by the Lord. God is not only looking out for you each day, but David said God is watching over our coming and our going forevermore. That's deep. Our coming and going forevermore. So that means until we take our very last breath on this earth, we are protected, we are cared for, and we are loved by God. As a shepherd cares for his sheep, so does God care for God's creation, as we are made in his image. So as you continue throughout your day, know that you are not alone. You have help above as you look unto the hills. Let us pray. Lord our God, our El Shaddai, our Almighty God, we are thankful to take a break in a moment to receive the words of encouragement on this morning you have given to us, to know, no matter the circumstances or situations in our lives, if we look to the hills as you are our help, then all things will work to the good of those who love you and are called according to your purpose. So as we all have purpose or journey, you have uniquely designed for each of us. I pray your continued discernment, guidance, and wisdom to remain the course, to stay strong and diligent as we go through the process in achieving the goals set forth. Lord, I pray over each person virtually at the NNO Symposium that we will continue to be a beacon of light to all those who we encounter as we strive to work together as one body, no matter the rank, active duty or retired, male or female, or ethnicity, for we are all your children, and you have no respect of person. May we love with the same love and forgiveness you give us daily. In your most precious and mighty name, we pray. Amen. This has been and is your motivational moment. May you enjoy the Navy Day and all that is there. Continue to remember to be that beacon of light. God bless and go in peace. See you on tomorrow. Thank you.
And amen. And thank you, Chaplain. Inspirational as always. It's about
yeah, we're a little early
for underway time. But look, I believe I read somewhere in the Bible that the Lord wasn't up for people that just gabbed on and prayed incessantly. I believe I read.
Amen.
Okay, babbling is the word he used. But we will start promptly at the top of the hour. So go get your coffee, recharge, or your water, or whatever you need to do, and we will start promptly at 10:00. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. See you in a little bit.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, sir. On behalf of the National Naval Officers Association and the Navy, thank you for attending the 49th NNOA Annual Symposium. I'm your host, Lieutenant Jared Reed Dixon. If your internet service can support it, I encourage you to also turn on your camera. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple ground rules. All mics should be muted, and please ensure that you remain muted to ensure background noises don't affect the session. This session is being recorded and shared for future viewing. Next, please update your screen name with your rank and title and preferred name so we can have a sense of who is online. When you hover the mouse over your window in the top right corner, you'll see an ellipse, which are the 3 dots. Click on that and then select Rename. Also, for viewing in the top right corner of your screen, you can see view options. Click on that and toggle between the speaker and the gallery view. Third, we definitely want to make sure that we take all of your questions. So please ensure that you're utilizing the chat function to send in your questions. We'll keep track of them and we'll ask questions on your behalf. The goal is to get through as many questions as possible in a fair and equitable manner without hindering quality discussions. Finally, throughout the session, I'll be taking screenshots to show participation via social media after the fact. They may be used in future advertising or other promotional avenues, just so you know. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Admiral Harris for opening remarks.
And thank you so much, Jared. I really appreciate the work that you and the team have put into today. I, as my preacher would say, I'm on tiptoe expectation with what is going to come from today's 49th Leadership and Career Development Symposium. We had a great session yesterday, joint flag officer session with Vice Admiral John Nowell, the Chief of Naval Personnel, with Rear Admiral Joanna Noonan, the Assistant Commandant for HR at the Coast Guard, with the Marine Air Wing Commander out in Okinawa, Major General Phantom Brian Kavanaugh, and rounding out with Supply Corps, with the Director of Logistics and Ordnance in the Pacific for the Pacific Fleet, Rear Admiral Dion English. It was a great session. I hope you have a chance to listen to it and gain from it. Today is jam-packed. In fact, this whole week is jam-packed. We had to expand it to a 4th day because there was so much content that we needed to pass to you all, the members. But remember, at the bottom line of this is that NNOA is for the active and reserve officers of our sea services. Now, we retirees like myself and others, we play a part, but this should be your time. You should be asking and driving home the questions that you want to have answered by leadership. And this is the time to engage. We are starting off with a video
yesterday verbally.
Please remember, put yourself on mute. I see at least one person, Mr. Silverman. I think you're not muted, but please stay on mute. We've got a video coming from the CNO. He couldn't be here live, but we got the Vice Chief coming in. And that's going to be a fantastic session. We've got a history moment that precedes that coming up here in less than 4 minutes with the Director of the Navy Historical and Heritage Command, Rear Admiral Cox, and he'll be facilitated by our own Captain Dr. Rick Wright, her historian. We got the IG. It's much better to hear from the IG when things are fine than for hear from him afterwards. So take a lesson and listen to the IG when he comes on here and joins us. We've got Miss Alala Jenkins coming to us. She's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Navy Financial Management. Believe me, money matters, and you want to hear what Miss Jenkins has to say. We've got a brand new leader for diversity and inclusion in Dr. Chuck Barber coming to us today. And then we're going to have the transition assistance team, our Veterans Action Program speaker, come on, Mr. Thomas Peoples. He'll be facilitated by Anthony Crosby. We'll finish up with remarks from Milton Troy, who is our Navy rep, and then I will have a closed session for Flag, General, and SESs afterwards. But it's a jam-packed day, and tomorrow's going to be even greater with a commandant and just an all-star cast. A few things to remember. Number one, vote. Okay, please vote. I think we all have seen how important voting is in our nation. Okay, it's just as important in our NNOA. So please vote. If you have a question, contact the legal advisor, Tracy Holt-Shirley, and he'll give you the details. STEM City, the CCG, Ty Hayborn and his group have been very generous and allowed us access into their platform, and it's going through STEM City. You see a lot of content there that's worth sharing with all the people that you mentor. And the 50th, as the sign says behind me, we have our 50th anniversary coming in Annapolis, and you don't want to miss it. To get ready for it, we're gonna have a logo contest. And we're gonna see what the logo for NNOA should be for the next 50 years. So lots going on. I'm going to shut up because I'm not the person you want to hear from. You want to hear from this great cast we have here. Please engage. And now I suppose, Jared, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's time for me to turn it over to Captain Dr. Rick Wright from Syracuse, New York. And he needs to unmute himself. Never known a cue that had to be unmuted. There you go.
The only thing I can say is that, after teaching this all the time and all those incredible days of being here at the Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse, I forgot to unmute myself. So I talked to this great, incredible NNOA family all over the world. I'm Captain Rick Wright, your historian, and this is the historical perspective agenda of the 49th Annual Symposium of the fantastic National Naval Officers Association. Bravo Zulu to everybody. And today our guest is Admiral Samuel Cox, who is the director of the Navy History and Heritage Command in Washington, D.C. And I think from our IT team, is Admiral Cox online yet, guys? I saw a message that we haven't gotten him online yet.
He is not online yet, Captain.
Okay.
We are trying to contact him now.
I got all the Zoom information. I just retransmitted about an hour ago to Petty Officer Lynette Evans down at the Naval History and Heritage Command. So Admiral Cox should be around. But first of all, let me use this time to say we are coming up to our 50th anniversary of the National Naval Officers Association. Our organization was formed during a pretty challenging time in American history and the history of the sea services, the early 1970s. And of course, at that time, a survey was done trying to find out how many African-American officers was in the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, and the United States Coast Guard. And the numbers were quite dismal. But in that moment, we also must remember that Admiral Samuel Gravely received his rank of admiral in the United States Navy at the same identical time. But the history that we have put on the table is absolutely fantastic. And as we kick off this, the 49th Annual Symposium of the National Naval Officers Association, let's remember the foundation that was laid for the incredible success and stories and challenging times that we've had over the last 50 years. And of course, we're going to be going to Annapolis, Maryland. As your historian, one of the things that I want to do this today is to kick off our official celebration of the 50th anniversary. And of course, the key thing that I would like to indicate is that we need to put together a historical team of members who are historians in the United States Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Public Health Service, NORA, and all of the other affiliated organizations to tell our history so that when we do arrive in fact, hold on, stand by 1 second. My phone is ringing from the Navy Historical Command right now. Stand by 1 second here. Hello, is this Petty Officer Evans?
No, it's John DeLuca. I'm the Chief of Staff at NHHC. I think you got the wrong number for the director. He's on with somebody else.
Oh, he's got the wrong number. IT team, Captain Rick Wright. I have the Navy Historical and Heritage Command on the telephone, and Admiral Cox has got the wrong dial-in information, looks like. Am I copying this correctly?
Yeah, we just, whatever the meeting ID is,
Okay, stand by. To our great IT team, phone number 202-427-4443. Dial it. Navy Yard. They need instructions to get Admiral Cox on the air. Well, I'm enjoying this, man. I taught this in my broadcast performance class at the SI Newhouse School of Public Communications, that when things did not go right, it's time to show your professionalism. So, hey, you folk got it? I'm on air right now with the 49th Annual Symposium of the National Naval Officers Symposium. So all my folk in Washington, you get the information out? Okay, stand by. The IT team should be contacting you. All righty. Okay, you're standing by. Okay, well, I gave the phone number out, and IT team, they're waiting for you at the Navy Historical Heritage Command, Navy Yard, Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will pick up your annual symposium booklet, there is a historical article that I wrote. And of course, in this particular article, I indicate, as we approach the 50th anniversary of the National Naval Officers Association and your attendance at our annual family meeting, the 49th Symposium, November, that is NNOA 16th through the 20th of August in the year 2021. Virtual style format of technology. Your historian would like to wish all shipmates of the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps, United States Coast Guard, the U.S. Public Health Service, and the National Oceanographic and Administration fair winds and following seas. For our ongoing mission for the past 5 decades has been providing leadership for the continuous development of diversity and inclusion of all shipmates within the ranks of the sea services. This monumental challenge has been performed in a most accomplished manner by the, quote, capable navigational skills of our presidents and their skills of duty, service, and honor, allowing them to stay on mission target. As NOA transit through various waterways and airways of the world over the last 50 years or so, these particular navigational bearing positions were filled with demanding and challenging sea and air state conditions in carrying out the mission of the National Naval Officers Association. This historical perspective is a review and documentation, saluting and naming our presidents, all of our presidents, up to our great new president who's been on board, not new, he's been around working his heart, soul, and body out, Admiral Sinclair Harris. And I salute you, Admiral Harris, for your great, incredible leadership. The humble beginnings of NNOA start in the early 1970s at Annapolis, Maryland. Stand by 1 second here. Phone's ringing off again from Washington here. Let's see, stand by. Let me get the answer button going. Okay, got you on speaker. Okay. Washington, are you there? Hello? Are you there? Well, I'm telling you, technology, I'm loving it. They're calling me, IT team.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to make an audible here. Jared, can we, an IT team, can we play the CNO video now while we work out the communications with Admiral Cox?
That sounds like a plan.
Yes, sir. Stand by.
Okay, so everybody, we're doing the audible. We're going to play the CNO video. It's about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back to Captain Dr. Rick Wright. And by then, hopefully, we'll have the Naval Historical Command online for their section.
Roger that.
Shipmates, C&O Guild Day here. Thank you for participating in this year's National Naval Officers Association Leadership, Professional Development, and Training Symposium. And while I wish I could join you in person, I'm grateful to NNOA for the opportunity to speak to you today. For nearly half a century, NNOA has helped the Sea Services attract and retain a more diverse officer corps and dedicated itself to our most important resource, our people. Along the way, you've encouraged and mentored sailors, instilled a sense of belonging, and pushed us to be a better Navy. I'm a student of Colonel John Boyd, the legendary Air Force pilot and military strategist who once said, "People, ideas, and machines in that order," when applying his military thinking to organizations. We can never lose sight of that. Success in day-to-day competition, crisis, and need-be conflict does not simply come from ships, sensors, or weapons. It comes from the intersection between people and technology. So it's fitting this year's symposium theme is operationalizing diversity and inclusion, an imperative for sustaining readiness, because our nation is currently engaged in the most competitive strategic environment we've seen in a generation. Meanwhile, we're still weathering the effects of COVID-19, the events of January 6th, and the racial injustice and extremism that still exists in our society. And while there is certainly more work to be done, I believe we've made progress in addressing discrimination. As you know, Admiral Halsey led Task Force 1 Navy last year, and that team delivered almost 60 recommendations focused on the Navy's sustainment towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm glad to say we're implementing them into our Culture of Excellence campaign, and our goal is to institutionalize those changes. We all come from different backgrounds and unique experiences, but each of us swore the same oath. And whether you're active or reserved, uniformed or civilian, you should feel welcomed, valued, and you should feel at home amongst family and our Navy. I can't thank you enough for the important work that you do day in and day out. Please accept my best wishes for this year's symposium, and I look forward to seeing you next year at your 50th. Thank you.
And thank you, Admiral Gilday, C&O Gilday. Great message, and again, it gives us something to aim for coming not too long from now in Annapolis. And I see my shipmate, Admiral Sam Cox. So over to you, Dr. Captain Rick Wright and Sam Cox, for our historical perspective.
Okay, thank you very much, Petty Officer Evans. Admiral Cox, you got a great staff down there in Washington, D.C. They can hear me from that standpoint. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm enjoying this, the 49th session of the great, fantastic National Naval Officers Association. Admiral Cox, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning, Rick. Can you hear me?
Oh, got you loud and clear. Roger that, Admiral.
Okay, great.
Admiral Cox, everybody, is a 1980 graduate of the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland. He has been absolutely tremendous as a historian. And of course, after spending time at the Naval Academy, Admiral Cox put together a most impressive, incredible career in the United States Navy in the intel community. And I think Admiral Cox, you rose to the highest of levels that you could ever want to be in the United States Navy as an intel officer. And of course, Admiral Cox now is the director of the Navy's Historical and Heritage Command at Washington, D.C. Navy Yard. Admiral Cox, welcome to the 49th Annual Symposium of NNOA. We got you, and that's all that matters this morning. Admiral, this is a historical perspective of the National Naval Officers Association. And what I'd like to basically open up this morning, over the last 50 years, we've been working to hopefully, and we had a lot of success, and there have been low points too, of the whole area of diversity and inclusion within the ranks. Admiral, what is your perspective on where we are today, what we need to do as we get ready for the 50th anniversary of NNOA?
Well, one, Rick, thank you for that overly enthusiastic introduction. I appreciate it. Apologize for somehow had the wrong code for getting into the meeting. Yeah, let me start. Historical perspective. You need to go back a little bit. But first off, it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to speak to the group today. I deeply believe in your mission, which is why I wanted to make sure that I cleared everything so that I could participate in this, because it's important. What the work that NNOA does is key, is critical to making sure that the Navy, the other naval services, are doing our best to live up to the high ideals that were established in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which our country has, mostly made progress, actually a lot of progress, but, still a lot of work to be done. And I think NNOA is actually helping, do that work. I would note that, when I first became a flag officer back in 2007, there was a requirement. I don't know if it's still a requirement, but every flag officer had to do 2 diversity events, every year. And then they hand out a sheet that says list of all these different, Navy authorized diversity events. And as I'm going through it, it says, well, female officer preferred, African-American officer preferred, Hispanic officer preferred. And I'm thinking, well, now you're getting the taste of what it feels like, buddy. But so it wound up that the Native Americans weren't picky. In fact, Jeff Trussler is now Vice Admiral. He was still a commander, so I had no competition for that slot. And I went to Native American events for my diversity. And frankly, it was one of the most rewarding things I did as a flag officer, was to interact with that particular community. I was well aware of the history, much of it tragic, going all the way back to Christopher Columbus's genocide of the Taino Indians in Hispaniola. And I really can't put it, any other way. Sand Creek, the Trail of Tears with, Andrew Jackson and all of that. And when I interacted with the Native community, and I thought I knew about history, but I learned a lot from them. One thing I learned was that Native Americans serve at a greater percentage at the enlisted ranks than any other minority group within the country, which is all the more amazing when you think about the history of what they've been through. And to me, I found that something that, all Americans should be deeply grateful that Native Americans serve. It also turned out that that percentage was flipped in the case of officers, in that it was extremely difficult to get Native American officers, into the Navy. And that had more to do with competition. If the Native Americans could actually stay in school, which was key to kind of everything, they would be, they'd be snapped up by IBM and other folks when they graduated from college, and we couldn't get them. But the reason I'm talking about that is because, NNOA is it's not just about African Americans, it's about all minorities. And that's why I think the mission is so important and so good. Looking back at, NNOA itself, I went back on the website to look at, how it began in, 1970 at the Naval Academy with Lieutenant Kenneth Johnson, who was an advisor for minority affairs there, and the iterations of several meetings that were led by, eventually in 1972, Captain Emerson Emery, establishing the organization. He was the first one elected as president. Now there's an interesting biography to look at him. I'm not going to go into great detail, but we're talking doctor, lawyer, naval officer, psychiatrist, and spent some time in jail for dispensing narcotics illegally to help veterans, actually. But incredible, the things that he did to further the cause of justice and cause of racial equality, more than compensate for whatever his failings, might have been, which I would say were actually very minor. But what was lacking in that was, well, what was going on at the time that NNOA was first stood up. And it was a very, very troubled time within the United States for race relations. In fact, when there's plenty of competition for bad times in race relations throughout the history of the Navy and our country, but it's particularly bad right then. If I may go even further back than that, in the United States Navy, if you go back to the Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War, the Navy was integrated at the enlisted ranks, where Black sailors, there didn't happen to be any other minorities at that time, trying to get in. So that was basically, the only minority. It had very little to do with, in fact, the Navy was hardly a progressive organization. It had more to do with the extreme difficulty of finding anyone who would climb up into those masts in an ice storm and to live hard life of a sailor was very, very difficult. At the officer ranks, it just wasn't even thought of that Blacks could be an officer. These were gentlemen. In fact, if you look at Farragut is probably an outlier in that he came from Hispanic heritage. His father was born in Majorca, Spain. But almost every officer, in the 1800s into the early 1900s was, pure lily white. The Blacks in the ranks performed with great valor. There were 8 Black sailors awarded Medal of Honor during the Civil War. At that time, there was the Medal of Honor or nothing. So, the standards were a bit different than they are now. But nevertheless, when you look at the citations for each of them, it was for, serious valor in serious battles. There were periods where secretaries of the Navy, when we'd get one from the South who would go, well, we want to get rid of the Blacks from our Navy. And the ship COs, who at that time actually were responsible for recruiting their own crews, it wasn't a Navy-wide thing. They generally blew off the Secretary of the Navy because they had to get people wherever they could get them. And Black sailors were actually good. So that continued in that fashion all the way up until, about the 1900 or so. And as the Navy made the transition from sail to steam, and the Navy became increasingly technical with things like radar, underwater communications, things like that. The Navy started instituting, educational requirements for specific of the more technical rates within the Navy. This was not intended to be discriminatory, but it was, because Blacks had far less opportunity to get a decent education back then. And as a result, you started having stratification of, white sailors getting the technical rates where you don't get your hands dirty too much, and Black sailors being, coal passers, and eventually relegated to being officers, cooks, and officers, stewards. And that's kind of how it went all the way up until, World War II. During World War I, the Wilson administration engaged in overt segregation and segregated the Navy for the first time, which had not been the case, for 150 years before that. So during World War II, things start to change. I'll get into a little bit about the story of Doris Miller in a bit, but there was significant resistance within the Navy to allowing Blacks to do anything meaningful. Whether a Black sailor had a combat role or not had a lot to do with where in the United States the ship's commanding officer came from. And there are quite a few cases actually where Blacks were manning guns during the war with great valor, and there are some cases of Black sailors manning 20 millimeter guns in the face of kamikaze attacks and standing their ground until that plane hit, not running away, but the extraordinary valor. And you have the case of like the submarine Cobia, which, in their after action report, after the war, they're writing about, what they did during the war. And the author of this is like, well, we kind of got a secret that, we really have to, in all fairness, we have to admit that our commanding officer had a competition for who were the best gunners, and the two stewards mates were the best gunners. So anytime the Cobia went to battle station surface, two black sailors were the ones manning the guns. Now the cynic might say, well, those are also the guys most likely to die when the shooting starts. But in that case, I'd like to think of the more positive approach. But it was very, mixed bags. It wasn't until Secretary Frank Knox basically died. He was a staunch segregationist, had no use for black sailors. Admiral King, Secretary of the Navy Forrestal, realized that, hey, we can't fight a war without everybody, on board. Especially blacks contributing to the industrial war effort in particular, but started to bring them in initially in segregated training facilities until, King went, well, this is stupid. I don't have enough trainers to train, have two different things. So after the war, Truman, desegregates the Navy and the entire armed forces. It still takes years for that to get through. So by the time NNOA is being stood up, in 1971, the Navy was the least integrated at any rank of any of the services. Only about 5% of sailors were black, and 0.7% of officers were black. And this was after, over 20 years of after Truman, integrated the ranks. And the reason is actually very similar to what happened in 1900, in that during Vietnam, you had a draft. And a good way to avoid, slogging through rice paddies in Vietnam was to join the Navy. So the Navy recruiters were having a bonanza. They had the pick of, high educated people and everything, and blacks couldn't compete against that. So they were actually, it was not deliberate discrimination, but it was, when you talk about, institutional racism, well, there's kind of an example, of that. Well, the draft, was obvious the draft was going to end in 1972, and it was over by 1973. And as a result, all of a sudden, the recruiters went from having, meeting 105% of their quota to only meeting 50% of their quota, and they had to open the aperture and let more people in, and that included more people, of color. And the challenge is the people of color didn't have the educational credentials as the other folks. So once again, they're relegated to, the more menial tasks, on board a ship. And actually the tension aboard ships in 1970, 71, 73 got extremely high to the point where you had a riot on the Kitty Hawk in 1972 and on the oiler Hassayampa the same year, and then a big sit-down strike on the Constellation. And this was even after, in 1970, Secretary of the Navy Chaffee sent out, his message to the whole Navy for, hey, equal opportunity. And Elmo Zumwalt, the CNO, sent out Z-Gram 66 in 1971, basically saying, hey, demanding to the officers that we need to have equal opportunity within the Navy. Well, then you had these riots and disturbances. And 2 years later, Zumwalt has to chew the whole flag corps out, because they're not living, they're ignoring his directive. So, it's in that milieu that NNOA was first stood up. And I would say that since then, I mean, we've made enormous progress, not just for African Americans, but for the Native Americans, for Hispanics, for everyone. Let me just a couple items that bring it to a little more contemporary period. One, most of you have probably heard that we're going to name a aircraft carrier. Matter of fact, we have. It's a done deal. After Doris Miller, who was a mess attendant at Pearl Harbor, performed with extraordinary valor during the attack, as did many people, but he did. And the Naval History and Heritage Command, one of my responsibilities for the command is that, anytime a ship is coming up for renaming, we will provide a list of, hey, based on the historical traditional naming convention for that ship, we will give a list to the Secretary of the Navy, and the Secretary of the Navy can choose, whatever he wants, or do whatever he wants. And over the last, number of years, we've also included what I would call, a diversity candidate in each, list that we send forward to try to, do our part in this. In the case of Doris Miller, then, Acting Secretary Modley had actually met with a number of Black flag officers and I think other officers as well, to try to, if I name an aircraft carrier after a Black sailor, who should it be? And they came back and it was Doris Miller. I could think of a couple other really great contenders, but Doris Miller is great. But anyway, in this case, I had no idea this was going on. In this case, I'm sitting at my desk minding my own business, and the phone rings, and it's the Acting Secretary of the Navy, and he goes, "Hey, what about any reason I can't name an aircraft carrier after Doris Miller?" And I went, "Well, no, sir. You have under law and policy complete discretion to name a ship anything that you want." I would note that this is outside the normal naming convention for an aircraft carrier, but Secretary of the Navy's have been breaking the rules since the first 6 frigates in 1794, when Benjamin Stoddard named one of them the Chesapeake, that's not the sequence of names for that. So, you have authority to do it. I would only put out that he deserved the medal. There's no question about that. But if you start, pulling the string on that, the Navy was forced to give him that medal by outside pressure. When the initial reports from Pearl Harbor came out, there was a list of, all these sailors who did great things, and it's a unnamed Negro is noted for valorous conduct, and that was it. Well, some of the Black papers, particularly there was one in Pittsburgh in particular, found out his name, and then started lobbying for, initially for a Distinguished Service Medal, which or Distinguished Service Cross, which isn't a Navy medal, but that's beside the point. Then lobbied for a Medal of Honor. In the face of the pressure, Secretary Knox, who I already talked about, said, "Well, I'll give him a letter of commendation." Well, which, nowadays that's nothing. Back then that actually was something, but it's not, it's not a medal for valor. And it took the political pressure and eventually Eleanor Roosevelt pressuring her husband to pressure Knox and King was like, "I get it," so, and Nimitz had no problem, doing it. He understood. So, but, that's the kind of, the history of this is that, yeah, this is a great name, but you got to understand, how it came about. Personally, I think it's a fantastic choice. It's the first aircraft carrier named after an enlisted sailor, first aircraft carrier named after a minority of any kind. And I applaud, Acting Secretary Modley in that case for taking what is pretty a bold, action. You still had the troglodytes on, Navy Times, webpage and whatnot. Well, why are we naming an aircraft carrier after a girl? Doris is not, the ignoramuses are out there, but it's a great choice. Another thing that's been going on lately is actually a pretty intense campaign to get the Navy to name a ship after Telesforo Trinidad, he's the only Filipino in the United States Navy to have been awarded a Medal of Honor. And it was awarded at a time when the medal could be given for non-combat bravery, but it's still bravery. And it was during a boiler fire and explosion on board the armored cruiser San Diego in 1915. And Telesforo went back into the boiler room several times to rescue, other sailors. And as a result was awarded the Medal of Honor. We have included his name on, as I mentioned, we include, a diversity pick in each list that we send forward. And so far it hasn't been picked. But I'm optimistic that it's going to happen. Filipinos have been serving, in our Navy, in many cases early on as stewards and culinary specialists, subject to the same discrimination as, any other minority within the Navy. But continue to serve in large numbers with distinction and in some cases valor. So I'm hoping that the next Secretary of the Navy will make that choice. Another thing that occurred over the last year, I would go goes back to the Native American issue. One of my childhood heroes was Commander Ernest Evans, who I was reading about naval history before I could read. He was a hero, and I knew what he had done at the Battle off Samar and Leyte Gulf, which is generally described as the most heroic action in the entire history of the United States Navy, where his destroyer single-handedly charged a Japanese force of 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, and 11 destroyers. And eventually he was awarded a posthumous Medal of Honor. His ship was sunk, but the actions during that battle, when you look at what that ship did, are just absolutely eye-watering in terms of the valor of Ernest Evans and his crew. I did not know at the time until many years later that Ernest Evans was Native American. It's not a name that jumps out at you. And then when you start looking through that list, you see J.J. Clark, John Waldron, James E. Williams, Thornton. None of them have obvious Native American names, but all of them are, and have credible records of valor. Well, a couple years ago, I was in the Solomon Islands with a group called the Vulcan Incorporated on a research ship called the Petrel, and we were looking for sunken U.S. aircraft carriers, the Wasp and the Hornet, which we found. But we were in Iron Bottom Sound off of Guadalcanal, which is named that because of all the U.S. and Japanese ships that are on the bottom there. And we were taking a look at one of the destroyers down there, the Laffey, which was also incredibly heroic action. And the mission director asked me, well, if you could find any ship, if we could find any ship in the world for the Navy, they do this because it's kind of their hobby, and they don't charge us anything. And I said the Johnston, and he went, yeah, okay, well that's really, really deep. I said I know. But he went out and he found it. We weren't sure at first whether it was actually the Johnston, because the part of the wreck that he found was at 20,000 feet, which is the absolute deepest his equipment could go. And there were 2 Fletcher class destroyers lost in that action, the Johnston and the Whole valorous as well, an incredible story for her. But trying to tell those 2 virtually identical ships apart was extremely difficult. Well, this year we had another guy, Victor Vescovo, who's a retired Navy Reserve intel officer who made it big on Wall Street, has his own submersible that can go down to the deepest point of any ocean. And he's been to the deepest point of every ocean in the world. And he also climbed the highest mountain in every continent in the world too. He's got and he found it. The front half of it, another 1,000, 1,500 feet underneath, where the previous wreck was. And this one, we're able to confirm that this is in fact was the Johnston. It was a ship commanded by the first Native American to be awarded a Medal of Honor in the history of the United States. So, to me, it was a big deal because it's my hero. I would note that, Naval History and Heritage Command is responsible for 3,000 sunken ships and 17,000 crashed aircraft. The Navy never gives up title to any of those. And they basically belong to me. So I can claim to have the largest fleet in the world. It's just that it's on the bottom of the ocean. But we have an interest in, those are war graves. Those are hallowed sites. And we have an interest in protecting them and making sure that they're not disturbed by other folks. So let me just, wrap it up a little bit. Some of the recent things we've been engaged in is the Congressional Base Renaming Commission, which has finally started to address the fact that, we have bases throughout the country that are named after, people who were basically traitors to this country. I will admit that the Southerners fought with, extraordinary skill and valor, but on the wrong side. For a cause that we should all be ashamed of. But we've been working with the commission. We've gone through U.S. Navy ships, bases. We don't have the same level of problem that the Army does, and that goes back to Jim Crow and when those bases were established and when they needed Southerners in Congress to support and whatnot. But I think we're in the process now of rewriting regulations to, make sure that essentially names that are forwarded to the Secretary of the Navy are in effect vetted okay, they're not slaveholders. They didn't fight for the Confederacy. They're not, flaming segregationists. We got a couple ships in commission that have that problem, which would be, Vincent and Stennis. Whether those names get changed or not, that'll be way above my pay grade. But there are other, the street names at Key West named after, the Southern Secretary of the Navy, Confederate Secretary of the Navy. That needs to be changed. There's a lot of things like that. If I were a Native American and I had to look every day at Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill, I'd feel pretty bad. And frankly, I'm all for Harriet Tubman on that. I mean, that lady kicked some butt. I mean, look at her bio and some of the things she did during the Civil War. It's like, well, she's got my vote. So anyway, that brings me up to, kind of present. I think, as I stated at the very beginning, NNOA, your mission is important to making sure that we move forward. I mean, Martin Luther King said that the arc of justice is long, but it bends toward, I screwed that up. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I would argue that it doesn't happen automatically. And certainly it bends and weaves and ducks and 2 steps forward, 1.5 back. It won't move forward unless we all are agreed that we need to move forward. And you look at what's going on in our country now, and we're not all agreed on that. But the more that people, fight for the rights, fight against discrimination, and I don't mean, with AK-47s or whatever, but, within our constitutional processes, and certainly within our right for, peaceful demonstration and things like that, which is guaranteed by the Constitution. But hopefully NNOA will keep the pressure on, like you've been doing for 49 years, and again, hopefully in the 50. And I really do believe that, we look back on history. The one thing about history is, you can rewrite it and cover it up, but you can't change what really happened. All we can do is agree to that we will all try to do better in the future. And I think everyone in the Navy should dedicate themselves to that. And I think NNOA is leading the way, being able to do that. So with that, I'll quit jamming the airwaves, and if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to try to address them.
Admiral Cox, an incredible presentation today, and thank God you mentioned Harriet Tubman. That legislation is already supposed to be passed for her to get her picture on the $20 bill. And of course, her grave is about 27 miles from my home here in Marcellus, New York, over in Auburn. Admiral, I was just having to look at the chat, and I saw the name Lieutenant Commander Bill Norman. And I'd like to put his name out. Bill Norman, who was pretty disillusioned, getting ready to get out of the Navy in the early 1970s. And Admiral, our CNO, Admiral Zumwalt, heard about him and brought him in. And I'd like to put his name on the record this afternoon as really being probably the greatest and one of the foremost persons to basically get the whole area of minority affairs rolling under Admiral Zumwalt's administration. Do you have some recollections of Lieutenant Commander Bill Norman, still alive and well?
Who me? Yeah, I know the name. I should know more about, what he did. I do know that, Zumwalt had the best of intentions, but, institutional resistance within the Navy was fierce. And, hey, Bernard Jackson, I know him. Thanks. We served together back at the CNO Strategic Studies Group. Nothing about this has ever been easy. And it took people, if you look like Samuel Gravely, we make a big deal out of, hey, he was the first African-American to be a flag officer in the Navy. And we take great pride in that. And then you look at his career, where pretty much at every point, the Navy tried to hold him back, send him to, dead end jobs and whatnot. And yet he still persevered, through all of that. So, on the one hand, what he did was great. On the other, when you look at what he had to do to get there, all we can do is, hey, do better, from here on out.
Admiral, you brought up Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, and for all of our great NNOA family members, everybody watching this presentation today, do you have that, I'm sure you have that memorandum in your archives at the Navy History and Heritage Command. I think it's September 19, 1940 memorandum, where Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox actually said that under no circumstances, the only role that Negro personnel will serve in the United States Navy is that of messman or steward, case closed. Of course, just before, of course, World War II, and of course, your mentioning of our great, incredible brother, Petty Officer Dory Miller on board the USS West Virginia on that Sunday. The Pittsburgh Courier, thank God for that newspaper out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because I think they said the next day they just said there was some Negro sailor just shooting down Japanese airplanes on board the West Virginia. But of course, he tried to save the life of his captain, shot down Japanese airplanes. And of course, Dory Miller, thank God we got a carrier named that, because he's really the first hero of World War II. And of course, as historians, we have got to do an even better job of really the documentation of what has happened, especially in the African-American ancestry in the role within the United States Navy.
Yeah.
Because I think so much of when I got my commission in the United States Navy, I was blessed to have Lieutenant Commander Dalton Baum swore me into the Navy, one of the Golden 13. And then when I was Frock the Commander, I was Public Affairs Officer of the Great Lakes Cruise USS Glover in 1986. Jesse Arbor, Frock the Commander in the United States Navy. So that's my lineage with the Golden 13. And the latest book by Daniel Goldberg on the history of the Golden 13 is absolutely outstanding. Yeah. I'm looking over in the chat area here, and of course, maybe I could just say again, I saw the one shot on Bill Norman, and to our person who wrote, Bill Norman was basically disillusioned, really was getting ready to get out of the Navy. He had done everything that you could possibly do as a naval officer, and the advancement was not there, and he was getting ready to get out of the Navy. And the the CNO, Elmore Zumwalt, heard about him, brought him in, and basically put him in charge of he was his special assistant for minority affairs under his administration. And then they set up the network that basically is the foundation for the creation of NNOA, with Lieutenant Kenneth Johnson, later Captain Johnson, being at the Naval Academy to basically try to increase the African-American numbers in the Blue and Gold program to make sure that Wesley Brown and Admiral Lawrence Chambers' ancestry would continue at the Academy. Okay. I'm looking
if I may just,
yes,
just to finish up on the Doris Miller story so that everyone knows. I mean, he was awarded the Navy Cross on the deck of the Enterprise by Admiral Nimitz. After Pearl Harbor, he served on board the cruiser Indianapolis for a while, which was sunk at the very end of the war. He got a couple promotions. It's confusing in how the steward's messman's rate was reorganized at the time. So it kind of looks like he got a demotion when in fact it was a promotion. But he was serving on the escort carrier Liscome Bay during the invasion of the Gilbert Islands of Macon and Tarawa. And Liscome Bay was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine, and the torpedo storage magazine blew up, and the ship went down with about 650 of her crew, one of which was Doris Miller. No one knows, exactly how he met his end. He just, ship went down with all those sailors, and he was one of them. So it actually had a tragic ending to his life, but he's a hero, and finally getting some serious, recognition for what he did.
Admiral Cox will be one of my hopes and dreams and aspirations that when the commissioning of the USS Doris Miller, great Navy aircraft carrier, that also on that day, that we can see an elevation of his award from the Navy Cross to the Medal of Honor. And of course, it should have happened years ago, but that would be a moment. And to our great NNOA family all over the world, watching the 49th Annual Symposium of NNOA as we get ready for our 50th celebration, that would be a great honor that we need to work on and make it happen. Admiral Cox, let's see if anything, I'm looking, trying to look into the chat room here myself and serving as I'm doing a horrible job as moderation today, but I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to work the chat room. I see the little gizmo, but.
Hey, Captain Wright.
Yes.
It's Jerome Davis here. How you doing?
Captain
Hey,
Jerome Davis came to
hey,
my
Admiral, how you doing? It's been a while since we last spoke. I had a quick question for the Admiral. Admiral, you pointed out the Dory Miller story. We had another guy that had a story that was just as compelling, and if not even greater than Dory Miller. His name was Charles Finch. I'm not certain if you're familiar with Charles Finch, but he was a guy, a sailor from World War II that actually his ship had gotten torpedoed, and he ended up saving about 15 crew members by swimming. They were all on rafts, and he had to swim about 6 to 8 hours carrying them to safety.
Oh yeah, the human tugboat.
The human, there you go, the human tugboat. And the thing is, and my question is there any effort by the Navy to upgrade his award? Because his crew members who he saved all believe he should have gotten the Medal of Honor, but all he received was a letter of commendation. So I was just wondering if there's any effort by the Navy to right that, grossly wrong injustice, because remember for many years, the Medal of Honor was an award for lifesaving. And this guy actually saved 15 lives at the peril of his own life. So I was just wondering if there's any effort within, say, your organization or within the Navy to get his letter of commendation upgraded to something more appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that's at a minimum, it should have been a Navy Marine Corps, medal. It's been a bone of contention of mine in that, one, the whole Navy award system is basically predicated on the principle that the original awarding authority got it right, because the original awarding authority had the most useful information, which I find to have not been true for wartime awards because we didn't have the other side of the story in many cases. But still, that's kind of how it is. So upgrading an award is really, really, really hard. And that's not something I have any control over. I can provide historic background to the awards board. But that one came down to, he was no longer in combat technically because the ship had already sunk. So he's not eligible for a combat award. My view is that he's in the water because his ship was sunk. I mean, for crying out loud, but where do you split hairs and draw that line? I had never heard of this until, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And I don't know what the current status, is. It's one of those things, unless there's someone on the outside pushing for it with some congressional help, it'll just, I can write about it and say, well, here's what I think really happened, but that doesn't change I can't change, awards or anything.
Thank you. And Admiral, I just wanted to point out one other thing. I just heard recently that the National VFW had endorsed the awarding of the Filipino guy for the naming of a ship. So I just heard at the recent VFW National Convention that VFW is online with endorsing that recommendation.
No, good for them.
Admiral Cox, let me just indicate to the NNOA family, Captain Jerome Davis, outstanding historian, secretary of the DC chapter of NNOA. And Captain Jerome Davis and I are working hard all the time for the documentation of our history. And we look forward to even working with you even closer, Admiral Cox, at the Navy History and Heritage Command with an NNOA connection on history, especially with the 80th anniversary ceremonies that are coming up. Not the 80th, excuse me, the 50th anniversary celebration, which is coming up next year at the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland. We have an incredible story to tell. And of course, I never forget Jesse Arbor, Golden 13 member who I met in Chicago every summer, telling me the many times of the disrespect that he received when he got his commission as a naval officer. Young petty officers that wouldn't salute him, couldn't go to the officers club. And of course, the opportunities that most of the guys got were nowhere near what their academic and intellectual capabilities were. And of course, the Golden 13, another incredible group. I'm always wondering what happened to the 3 Golden 13 members who didn't receive their commission. In fact, Daniel Goldberg, the latest writer, we were talking about that, but these guys completed the course. And of course, the academic average as of today, the Golden 13 members had an overall grade point average of 3.89 when they went through their OCS program in 1944. And today, that stands as one of the highest OCS averages of a naval officer class today in the Navy. And of course, so many stories in that whole area that we have got to document and keep telling.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that. And I found that to be, talking about injustice, all 16 of them passed the course with flying colors, and they were accused of cheating, which they didn't. But to have said, well, we're only going to take 13, and by golly, even though all 16 of you made it, 3 of you, have a nice life or whatever. It's just,
Well, Admiral
what can
Cox,
you say?
Hey, everybody, St. Harris here. This has been a great and informative discussion. Lots of good questions here on the chat, talking about Chaplain Parham as just one example of recognition, and there are many others we need to think about. But I've got to take the deck in the con because, as you know, as a surface warfare officer, I'm going to make sure the ship sails on time and on schedule. And we got the Vice Chief of Naval Operations in the waiting room, and tied in formation, wait for no man or woman.
Amen.
So, I'm going to ask Lieutenant Jared Reed Dixon and Commander Decretia Nolan to take over. I want to thank Captain Wright, Dr. Wright, for a great session with my shipmate, Rear Admiral Sam Cox, and thank Admiral Cox for the great work of the Naval Historical and Heritage Command. We look so much forward to next year, which will be even greater.
Bravo Zulu, Admiral Cox.
All right. Am I supposed to sign off?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lieutenant Jared Reed Dixon, and I will be your moderator for the best day, the Navy Day. I am class of 2017 from the United States Naval Academy, and I graduated as a Supply Corps officer. I laterally transferred into the public affairs community, and I am currently serving in sunny San Diego at SurfPac Surf 4. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Rear Admiral Harris and Admiral William Leacher.
And good morning, everyone. Sinclair Harris here again, and soon to be joined by our Vice Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lesher. And let me tell you, Bill Lesher is not only a friend of mine, a great shipmate, but an incredible leader for our time. Do we have Admiral Lesher here on the spotlight yet, their IT team? While you are doing that, I'll go ahead and just quickly read his bio. You already should know it by looking online or looking through our website, but he is a native of Highland Park, Illinois, a graduate of the Naval Academy and the Naval Postgraduate School and Harvard Business School, a skilled aviator, helicopter pilot. He was the Naval Test Pilot of the Year for the Naval Aviation's HSL Pilot of the Year for the NHA. He's the Regional Pilot of the Year as well. He was the Rotary Wing Test Pilot of the Year, so a skilled naval aviator. Experienced in and about the Pentagon. I know he was the N8, and anyone who's spent any time inside of the Pentagon and OPNAV knows the critical role that N8 plays in their work. Now, with all of his great operational tours and tours, you know, in and around the Pentagon, I know the one that was most exciting to him was as Expeditionary Strike Group 5 Commander, Task Forces 51 and 59 in Bahrain, where he had to clean up the mess that I left behind as his predecessor's predecessor in ESG 5 and leading the work that goes on over there. So I believe I was told Admiral Lesher is online, sir.
Admiral Lesher, please share your video so we can spotlight you.
He's in the room. We're trying to get him to turn on the camera.
Okay. Ask everybody to be patient. You know how this technology has worked for all of us.
Sink, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. Great to see you.
Yeah, we just catching up with you guys schedule-wise, so it's great to see you as well. How are you doing today?
Fantastic, fantastic, sir. We've got over 337 people registered for this year's symposium, over 120 online right now. We just had a great historical perspective by Rear Admiral Sam Cox, a great inspirational moment to kick off. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate your taking time. I've done 6 tours in DC, 5 in the Pentagon, 3 in the Navy staff. So I understand the value of your time and your staff's time in arranging for you to be here. So thank you, sir. And bravo Zulu to you, sir.
Hey, no, I appreciate it, Sink, and I really appreciate both the legacy of your service and leadership and your service in the Pentagon, because that's impressive and quite a haul. But I do want to say, hey, it's great to see you, and I'm thrilled to join you today for the return of the 49th year of the symposium. Very cool with that. But I wanted to thank you for inviting me to join you today. both CNO and I really value both what your leadership and what the NNOA does in providing the opportunity to get together, to work together on these critical outcomes, in particular retaining, mentoring, and attracting a more diverse force. So I'm eager to have a strong conversation with you today.
Yes, sir. And I don't know if there's any other open remarks you'd like to have or share with the team. We had a very nice video. Please pass my thanks and the thanks of all NNOA to CNO Gilday for a very nice video. But just to give you a chance on what's on your mind today.
Yeah, no, I'm eager to really speak to this audience. And so I'd love to have a Q&A with you and then hear from the 330 plus folks and the JOs on what they see. I want to hear their voice and really share what I think is some of the powerful approaches we're bringing to operationalize diversity and inclusion. And we can talk about it in more detail, but we are in about a 3 to 4 year journey now of transforming Navy performance on varsity hard outcomes, things that have been stagnant for a number of times that we must do better at, everything from aviation readiness, ship depot maintenance, our supply chain elements. And we have a body of learning that we're going to apply and are applying to diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes. We call it Perform to Plan. We call it Naval Sustainment System. We have these transformation engines. And so in this particular area, because it's been a Navy priority clearly for a long time, there's a tremendous amount of activity in the work we're doing to drive and improve DEI, but it's not always moving the needle and moving the outcomes. And so we see it, we're bringing it into this framework that is focused in a very structured way, and it's world-class learning on how to actually drive outcomes. And so I'd love to have some Q&A with you on that and then answer the broader audience's questions as well.
Absolutely, Vice Chief, appreciate it. I was there at Navy League where you talked about get real, get better. I tell you, it's about time. I really appreciate that mantra, clear, concise, and positive. So the first question, so as we enter this era of strategic competition, the Navy is dealing with a lot of complex challenges. How are we getting after these problems to create a more lethal and a more ready Navy?
Yeah, that's a great overarching question, and it really provides the framework for us to start big and dive down deep. The framework, which really describes how we're getting after these things in a very consequential way, is the CNO's navigation plan. And I'm confident the audience is familiar and has read the key pieces of that. So across 4 key pillars of sailors, readiness, lethality, capacity, it talks about the key outcomes we have. So sailors are going to outthink and outfight any adversary. From readiness, a force that's manned, trained, and equipped to deploy forward and win in the competition phase, in crisis phase, and in conflict. From capabilities, it's a force that's capable of projecting synchronized lethal and non-lethal effects in all domains. And from a capacity perspective, it's about fielding a larger hybrid fleet of both crewed and uncrewed systems in all domains. Now to your question is, hey, that's great. That's aspirational. How do we make it real? And the NAV plan implementation framework is really what provides the structure to make that real. And it incorporates some of this powerful learning I alluded to in the opening comments about how we're going to move the needle on some varsity hard outcomes. So some of the key NAV plan, strategic objectives within those 4 pillars of sailors, readiness, lethality, capacity, in force generation, which spans a number of those pillars. It includes things such as improving our aviation readiness, really improving the throughput in our ship and submarine maintenance, properly manning the force, bringing velocity to our supply chain. And the first objective under the sailor pillar is an inclusive and diverse force. So again, it'll be part of the structure, is part of the structure going forward. That's in the force generation elements. In the force employment elements of the NAV plan, those key outcomes includes things that we have put in what we call a 4+4 architecture. There's 4 key capabilities the Navy requires going forward. How we shoot, which is how we employ long-range fires. How we maneuver in a contested environment and an anti-access environment. So this has to do with how we employ counter C5 ISRT techniques. How we defend using directed energy, hard kill, soft kill, and how we resupply in a contested environment, contested logistics. So those are all key capabilities that have this construct of a clear, supported, accountable leader, and the framework that I'll talk about a little bit more going forward. The 4+4 is beyond those 4 key capabilities in force employment. There's 4 additional cross-cutting capabilities, which are important. Obviously, one being networks, the naval operational architecture, which we are getting after with under Admiral Doug Small's leadership in Project Overmatch. So networks, infrastructure, the data tools, and the data itself. Unmanned systems is another one of the cross-cutting enabling elements. As you can imagine, unmanned systems are relevant to all of those key capabilities I described. How we shoot, how we maneuver, how we defend, how we resupply. Unmanned can help in each of those areas. Live virtual constructive training is another element of the 4, and then AI machine learning. So that's an example of, to your question of, hey, how are we going to get after driving the Navy forward powerfully in a strong way? That's the construct, and then the tools within it, the powerful learning I would hype for the audience, is the transformation engines that we have 3 to 4 years of experience now. I'll give you a quick vignette sync that might help the audience understand how this is working. So in 2018, we had 250 to 255 mission capable F-18s, AKA Rhinos. Unhappily, we had been at 250 to 255 mission capable jets for 10 years, from 2008 to 2018. In 18, SecDef Mattis at the time challenged Navy and Air Force, I need you to get to 80% mission capable. 250 to 255 up jets was 55% mission capable, well off standard and well off what we needed to win the fight. Who we were at that time in terms of the behavior of how we drive outcomes was largely what you would recognize as input and activity driven. And in fact, that is a root cause for why we were stagnating at 250 to 255 jets. The requirement, 80% in terms of number of jets, in terms of what we needed to win the fight, was 341 jets. So we were between 90 to 100 jets short, very non-trivial. Who we were at the time, given SecDef's Mattis direction, would have been, hey, Sink, you go buy all the parts you can. Chris, you get all the throughput you can in the depots, hire people. Jay, you go hire all the repair you can from components. Let's go charge that hill and see where we'll be. In 2018, however, we were in the nascent stage of exploring what world-class looks like and what we needed to move the needle in varsity hard outcomes. And we had new tools available. We had an accountable leader in the Air Boss in a way that we hadn't before. We were able to digitally model and predict where we're going. And so we ran the following example, the following question. We said, hey, in our digital predictive model, let's just crank all those inputs up to 100% and see if we'll get to the SecDef goal in here. And we saw, instead of just pursuing the activity and pursuing the inputs, putting a plan of action of milestones together and charging the hill, we were thoughtful, we were predictive, we were looking for root cause, we were looking for leverage. We saw with the digital model that we would not get there just by cranking inputs. We needed a fundamental change in the transfer function between inputs and outcomes. We needed to fundamentally change our process capabilities. And so what I just described was the perform to plan transformation engine, which is the get real engine. What is our actual capability as opposed to just charging the hill? What's our baseline performance? What's the North Star? What's our ability? The complementary transformation engine is the get better engine, which is we went out and found world-class performance in the constraining, limiting factors that were driving our ability to get up jets, and we injected that into the Navy. And so that construct, perform to plan, get real about our actual capability in a very transparent way, and then inject world-class performance to get better is really the construct. How it turned out, even though in naval aviation, our self-talk was, hey, there's very little chance we're going to go from 55% to 80% in 1 year. Are you kidding me? We've been at this level for 10 years. In fact, we did achieve it. So naval aviation, under the leadership of Bullet Miller and Dean Peters and NAVAIR and others, Michelle Skubik and then Pete Stamatopoulos and NAVSUP, drove to 341. And we learned a number of things, starting with the fact that 50% of that improvement from 250, 255 to 341 was in 2 process changes, had nothing to do with inputs. We went down to Delta Tech Ops and Southwest Tech Ops, and we learned about the maintenance ops center and the aviation on ground cell. That was 30% of our improvement. Another 20% of our improvement was just from bringing velocity into the VFA squadrons themselves and the way they do maintenance and the way they did their 84-day check. So tremendous power of learning. That's the type of structure that now is being scaled in the NAVFINE implementation framework. And that is to include the DEI outcomes in the Sailor Objective S1. So hopefully that was helpful in answering your question, Sink.
Absolutely, and quite frankly, it made me think of a number of things. It's the old quote, and I don't know whether it was Churchill or somebody else who said, now that we've run out of money, we got to start thinking. Our budgets are what they are, and a lot of people project they'll be flat. We got a complex number of things coming up to be ready for. Let me ask you, sir, and given what you just talked about and your history, your personal history, Naval Academy, postgraduate school, Harvard, business MBA, talk to our young folk about the importance of education and that continuous learning that is what I took away from this conversation so far.
Yeah, education and training across the spectrum is going to be critical for us to drive to the type of behavior that moves the needle. And so let me talk a little bit about that briefly. So beyond the vignette I gave you for P2P, perform to plan aviation, enable sustainment aviation, we scaled that learning. And we continue to learn as we scaled it next into perform to plan surface ships, which looked at a similar sustained, not moving the needle issue, which was the on-time completion of DDG maintenance availabilities and applied the same principles, the same learning, and drove that from 7,000 days of maintenance delay to 4,000 days of maintenance delay last year and continue to get better amidst COVID. We scaled that then to submarines. We scaled it to the naval shipyards, the public shipyards, et cetera, et cetera. And after 4 years of this tackling varsity hard problems, bringing transformational approaches and moving the needle, not admiring the problem, moving the needle in very real ways, this is what I learned, and then I'm going to connect it to your question, Sink, about what it means for education. The good news here I would highlight for the audience is I'm talking to you about real Navy learning. I'm not talking about an interesting case study at Harvard Business School. I'm not talking to you about things we read out of a textbook. This is Navy learning. And what we saw and learned in terms of who we are is, and this is who we all kind of grew up in the Navy, I believe. We're activity focused and we bring a sense of speed to activity. And there's strong warfighting reasons why that is appropriate in force employment and other contexts. But in terms of solving force generation, force design, force development, force manning issues, we need this additional better behavior, which is to not just be activity focused, but to be outcome focused. So instead of the improvement dynamics, when we're improving with inputs and activity, are incredibly slow. And that's what we see. That's why the needle's not moving. So we shifted over the 4 years in these key areas from inputs and activity to outcomes, being predictive, finding leverage, and finding root cause. It sounds, okay, it sounds like you would get it, but the question is, how do you make it real? And that's where education has a role to play. The behavior from input and activities, other behaviors in terms of stovepiped behavior that we exhibit in the Navy. We like to report up echelon all green. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? The actual better behavior is to identify, find the red that drives improvement in the organization, embrace that and drive improvement. I talk to the NLEC classes, the leadership classes at War College every 3 to 4 weeks. These are the groups that are prospective major commanders, O5 commanders, and command master chiefs. I had the following conversation really I wanted to share with the group. I said to the major commanders, when subordinate A comes to you and says, I'm all green, good to go, and subordinate B comes to you and says, I found the red and I'm driving my unit to be better, I want you to rate subordinate B over A every time. Because status quo all green is insufficient. And it led to a good exchange with one of the students who said, hey, but Vice, should we really be rewarding red behavior? And my response was, I'm not looking to reward red behavior. I'm looking to reward improvement. And if we think that by embracing and showing all green up echelon, you're going to drive improvement, that's not what we see. We see thoughtful leaders looking down into their span of responsibility, finding the red, finding the opportunity for improvement, and then tackling that collaboratively across echelon. So another behavior we learned A couple of others I'll highlight. It is who we are to want to fix within the lifelines. It's incredibly important behavior. Sufficiency is critical for distributed maritime operations and the way we operate as a Navy. It's awesome behavior right up until the point that it slows us down because we're trying to fix things that are not actionable at your level. And so the changed behavior is not to just fix within lifelines, it's to fix or elevate with accountability and speed. And so where I'm going with this, Sync, is all of these behaviors are different in some respects, evolutionary from where we've been to what's right. And so we are working hard on the education piece to you. I'm a tremendous believer in the power of differences in all elements. It's why we're so enamored with driving speed into diversity, equity, and inclusion elements. But the power of differences in every element, professional, international, gender, race, ethnic, all of these things make us better. And so when it comes to education, I'm a fan of both the powerful education being done in graduate education at Monterey, but also in other elements that bring in these power of differences. The core question we're working with right now is across the behavior elements I kind of went through with you. So across 4 years of learning of what right looks like in terms of new behavior, what is the education component of that? What is the training component of that? And what's the talent management component of that? How we incentivize and reward people for those type of behaviors. So what I would highlight for you is there's ongoing work in a number of areas in the flag education courses, AFLEX, IFLEX, NFLEX. We are bringing in and Dean Klein at Navy War College is doing a fantastic job of bringing in world-class performers into this to elevate our gaze in these conversations, in this education of what world-class looks like and how we get after that. We're designing a new course on problem-solving skills for executives in the Navy, both flags, SES, and even 06s. That will teach some of this problem-solving, world-class problem-solving learning that I talked about as well. We're thinking hard about how to scale this education and training vertically into a continuum of problem-solving training in the Navy. Work to be done there, but some nascent pilot programs that we're exploring in that area as well. So in perhaps a somewhat long-winded way, education training about what right looks like is absolutely core. Doing that in a way that's not everybody stovepiped into a specific, either course or Navy schoolhouse, but to bring the power of different perspectives is going to be key as well. I guess I'd wrap this, Sync, by saying, and I think you heard me talk a little bit about this at the Sierra Space. Part of what's setting our sight picture on this is when we ask the following question: hey, where do you see world-class performance in the Navy? And it's a helpful question, I think, for the audience and others to think about. And my experience in asking groups this question is they start thinking, well, where do I see good performance in the Navy? And that's not my question. My question is, where do you see world-class performance? And I believe for the audience, what it suggests is the first question that you ought to be asking yourself is, how would I know? How do I know what world-class looks like? And the takeaway from that is across the group, just like we're doing at senior levels in the Navy, elevate your gaze, look out, scan outside your unit. Up and down the hangar, up and down the seawall, scan outside the Navy, scan outside DOD. Where does world-class look like? And then, as former SecDef Shanahan used to fondly call it, R&D, rip off and deploy world-class, bring it into your units. That's how we bring velocity of improvement to much of what we're doing. It's part of the clear benchmarking we're doing in DEI outcomes as well. Find world-class, compare it with the leverage and the root cause issues that are constraining our outcomes, which comes from our get real phase. And Task Force One Navy has been powerful in terms of illuminating and what the get real baseline performance is. Bring world class in and drive outcomes. Over.
Hey, sir, that was excellent in terms of responding to my question. And quite frankly, you gave me a tasker for NNOA. NNOA, we need to become world class. Okay, and we need to look at what world-class organizations do for us to continue to get better and to get real. Hey, sir, you already answered the question I was going to follow up with you on how improving DEI diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes play into this larger approach? You pretty much answered that one.
But let me, if it's okay with you, I want to give you a little bit more detail on that, or do you want to go to the next question?
No, go for it.
Yeah, because I want to speak with more specificity to understand, again, we're not about happy talk, we're not about hand waving, we're about get real and get better, all right? And it requires a real focused effort. So, the get real in DEI right now, that NAPLAN initiative S1 that N1 is leading, really starts with, again, what is our baseline performance? What are the North Star outcomes, right? Again, we got to be clear about what right looks like and what we're achieving to get. So from the baseline performance, what are the North Star outcomes? What are the drivers? Again, who we are often is we proliferate activity. And I think you see this in the DEI space in some respect and maybe in the past. And our instinct as leaders is, hey, look at the 3 lines of effort I'm doing to move on my POA&M, LOEs 1 through 3. And then when the needle doesn't move, what's our instinct? It's often to add LOEs 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7. It's the wrong instinct. We're learning to find, instead of proliferating activity, deep down, find the root cause, find leverage, and swarm the leverage that will make us move. So that's the get real piece that, again, Task Force One Navy, I think, has provided a strong foundational start, and then get better going forward. Some of the North Stars I'd highlight at a high level. In diversity, it's a Navy and Navy leadership that looks like the country it represents is something that is clearly part of that North Star. Equity, it's the same opportunity to contribute, excel, and advance in the Navy is open to all. And inclusion is the opportunity to speak with a strong voice and have your voice heard. Are some of the elements that are the construct of North Star from the baseline. Do we believe they have that? And then from there, we work with the metrics. How would we measure these sorts of things, and what are the drivers? I'd highlight as well, I think you're going to hear from Dr. Barber later today. He's doing some very strong work, and I think he is aligned with us well on the get real piece here. Let's get into the data, let's get into the surveys, let's get into the metrics, and move from get real to get better. And there are clear ways to operationalize this, which gets back to the theme we're talking about here, right? So we had to operationalize in diversity by working specific metrics and outcomes in the sessions, retention, promotion. Equity, we're looking in key billet representation and equity of access to schools and training. Inclusive culture, there are specific survey results that inform that, as well as there's the construct, the structure by which we're structuring much of the Navy work to be more collaborative. So I would highlight all of those as opportunities, and then probing in a very systematic way for where the leverage is that's going to move those outcomes in terms of policy, talent management, culture, and behavior leadership changes. So I just want to offer that additional detail on that.
Hey, thank you, Vice Chief. One final question from me before I'm going to turn it over to Jared, because he's collecting questions in the chat. And that is, what are some of the concrete high leverage things that the Navy has done that you think will impact the DEI outcome overall?
Great question. Again, I think I would cite Task Force One Navy as the most recent concrete actions from a baseline, get momentum started on moving us forward. And as I know many of the audience is tracking, Task Force One Navy had 56 recommendations, 17 implemented, 33 in progress, 6 to go. And those are concrete things across a number of the elements we talked about. So those actions span, in terms of new accessions, things like the Boost 2.0 program, the ROTC sideload program, which is 2- and 3-year scholarships for folks that have already started college, the ROTC prep program, the whole person perspective, which is being applied to each of our officer programs. There's retention initiatives, which include a DEI, a specific focus position at Naval Personnel Command, including diversity in all formal NOM packages, formalizing that as a requirement. There's promotion initiatives and things such as standardized precept for all non-statutory boards, formally tracking board membership diversity statistic. So Task Force One Navy under Bull Halsey very comprehensively looked through listening sessions and more broadly examining where we were, how to bring momentum. That's the baseline for now for this get better elements. One of the things that I'd highlight as I believe a particularly powerful concrete action taking place right now is the Navy Leadership Development Forums. And so these are forums where we provide templated briefs to the community leaders across all 17 Navy communities, aviation, SWO, sub, CEC, PAO, legal, all the community leaders come before CNO and VCNO together in a very small group. And we go through a templated brief that's data focused on DEI outcomes and destructive behavior outcomes as well. It's a powerful learning tool. It provides a cadence of accountability, and it provides 4-star barrier removal to our community leaders on what they need, what they've identified, role modeling, what I talked about earlier. Hey, fix the barriers at your level or elevate them with accountability to the vice chief, to this individual, and with specificity, which is not just, hey, more would be better, or I'd like something, but hey, vice, with this barrier removed, I understand my process well enough to say, I predict I'll achieve this delta outcome in this time frame. We can then prioritize and make that actionable. But it's an opportunity to prioritize best practices across Get Real, Get Better. A couple of examples of that I'd highlight. Air Boss Kenny Weitzel was in doing his NLDF recently, and he showed a strong kind of performed a plan construct for DE outcomes with specific measures and specific objectives that will drive us, test our self-talk about how we're going to improve, what that rate looks like, and help identify barriers. Another example, all of these NLDF briefs, as part of the templated data, have specific key billet identification for that community, the key billets that historically have led to promotion and advancement, building of skill sets, exposure, and leadership. And we evaluate how they're being detailed and how representative they are of our overall population. So I would tell you that there is strong, actionable, measurable, concrete action in your question taking place, and yet plenty of opportunity for us to continue to bring this into this framework and start really driving with measures, data, North Star outcomes, the Get Better phase.
Hey, Vice Chief, I appreciate the transparency, and I know everybody else does on the call. I think that's key to us getting better as well. Hey, Jared, over to you there, Lieutenant. You have the deck in the con.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Lieutenant Reed Dixon. I just want to say thank you again for joining us today. Our first question is going to be coming from Captain Mike Menno from the Civil Engineer Corps Head Detailer. Has the Navy defined specific and measurable diversity, equity, and inclusion outcomes, and or are the goals going to be tracked using the P2P process?
Appreciate the question, Mike. And I would cite that the development of the metrics are in work. They're and want to work very collaboratively with Dr. Barber on this well, who's bringing a similar perspective from his position in the Secretariat, the Navy Second Secretariat. I am aware, and for example, in the NLDF brief that I just highlighted with Admiral Weitzel, there are specific objectives. Now, there's not specific quotas for the reasons that are, you understand, that are legally constrained, but I don't think that's going to inhibit us in any manner, because clearly we want to improve. We want to improve the representation of the full population of the Navy, all of our stakeholders in key areas, key billets, key leadership positions. So metrics in work exist by specific community, and working with Dr. Barber and others to elevate that into the regular cadence of accountability that will occur in the NAVPLAN implementation framework S1 objective, which is an inclusive and diverse Navy.
Thank you so much, sir. So the second question I have for you is coming from Captain Retired Jerome Davis. So you put a lot of emphasis today on the different, education and different things that that education is obviously prominent to enforcing change. So what schooling would you recommend for critical analysis and or critical thinking to kind of help, push forward this change that we're going for?
Hey, Jerome, great question. Part of my answer is we are working to create those training and education opportunities in readily accessible Navy courses. So I'll start there. I'll tell you, as you hopefully appreciate from this conversation, this is a dynamic journey of learning for the Navy, but it's powerful. In every one of these perform to plan and naval sustainment system initiatives I talked about, and there's 7 P2Ps now, 3 NSSs, and a number of related elements. In every one of them, we bring a healthy sense of humility about what actual Delta outcome we're going to be able to drive, but we bring an absolute expectation that we're going to learn, and we're going to make the Navy better. So with that, where are we learning from? We're learning from reaching out and benchmarking generally outside the DoD ecosphere. I'm talking about reaching out to locating world-class companies who you should be happy and proud to know are thrilled to make their Navy stronger, not charging us for it. We sit down with their executives, we sit down with their leading practitioners, and we generally ask, a couple of very basic questions. What does it look like to be superb at allocating resources to make your strategy come alive? Second question is, what does it look like to be superb at executing those resources to create outcomes? And from that learning is what we've adapted. We haven't lifted wholesale from anybody. I would tell you, having spent a lot of time with many senior C-suite and other people, nobody has this suitcase. Everybody's learning together. And oftentimes these people are thrilled to learn from the Navy. But that's where our learning has been. And so, Jerome, there has not been a specific place where we can go and just pull it out of a textbook or pull it out of an education source. But to your point, I'm talking about world-class problem-solving skills. And we know what those look like. Some of them I highlighted for you at a very high level, and there's more detailed approaches to that. We're putting that training together now. We're going to create our vision is to create a continuum of training from the day one enters the Navy until the day you retire, a specific milestone elements to get increasingly deep understanding of what it means to be a world-class problem solver. And as a quick riff on this, I asked earlier, hey, where in the Navy do you see world-class performance? And to be clear, and by world-class, I don't mean world-class military, I mean world-class across the full scope of all activity in the world. And for sure, there's elements of the Navy that are that way. And one that is somewhat unique to the military is your Navy is absolutely world-class at force employment, at sending ordnance downrange and at fighting. And back to my earlier comment, how do we know that? We know that because we study and benchmark that in incredible detail. The related question that I often ask people, and you ought to reflect on, hey, do you believe in the Navy we are world-class problem solvers? And the same question hopefully comes immediately to your mind is, well, how would I know? Do I know what it means to be a world-class problem solver? And that's what we spend a lot of time benchmarking. And the journey that we're bringing across many of these Navy varsity hard problems, including DEI, is how we progress from where we are to that end state. And I would tell you, I believe in the Navy, we have very many exceptionally strong, in some cases, phenomenal leaders. But oftentimes our leaders, the problems our leaders are solving are not the same problems world-class problem solvers are solving. We often find ourselves muscling through status quo processes, using all the arrows in our leadership quiver to power through friction, get the ship deployed on time, get the flight schedule executed, get our work done. That's not what world-class problem solvers are doing. They're attacking the process. They're fundamentally understanding root cause, limb facts, and collaboratively driving process improvement so that they get that done once and they move on and devote their attention beyond that. Jerome, back to your question. So my personal experience, I both went to have an engineering degree from Monterey and MBA from a civilian business school. I found them both powerful. So this gets to my earlier comments. I would look, personally, if you're looking for education, I would look to what pulls you and look what gives you a unique, different perspective. I found the ability to sit in a classroom, an MBA classroom with an incredibly internationally and diverse in every manner group of people to be powerful for my thinking. I would highlight it as well. And then I would offer, be looking for the problem solving excellence, tools, skills, training. Some of it will be on web that the Navy is deploying as well.
Thank you, sir. So this question is coming from a retired commander. Reads, the immediate past national president of NNOA, she was the past president of NNOA, So right now we're being challenged with Navy junior officers believing in the relevance of NNOA. When she was a junior officer, the CNO and a bunch of commanders constantly in their travels talked about NNOA and its relevance to the Navy. From your level, do you have any ideas for how NNOA can get the message out to the more junior crowd?
No, so this is an excellent question. The relevance of NNOA is it provides a center of gravity. It provides these type of forums for us to get together and very overtly talk about what's hard and talk about how we're going to get after them. The question of how we message this is an excellent one. And I don't necessarily have any strong ideas. Sink, obviously you've been thinking hard about this for a while. What are your thoughts on how we might work together, not only on these DEI outcomes, but NNOA's role in driving them?
I owe myself $1 for not unmuting myself. Sir, a great question. And again, I'm thinking out loud here, but it's something that I've been thinking about for a while. Number one, I remind everybody, hey, look at our logo, okay? Represents all groups, male, female, all persuasions, all that. We're stronger together. So NNOA was never founded as a Black man or Black woman's organization. So anybody who's interested in inclusion and diversity and getting the Navy better should consider NNOA, in my view. And I've been the benefactor of white, male, female, Hispanic, of everybody in my career. So number one, who's our audience? Our audience are all the sea services and certainly the Navy, getting the word out. We've expanded, in social media, and our website's gotten much better. I send out emails all the doggone time, but I know people are flooded with information, okay? And it's hard to get above the chaff. But what I would ask the flag officer community to do is, and SCSs and the general officers, is to consider, when you're talking to various audiences, you ask them about NNOA. Have you ever heard of it? Have you ever looked at our website? You ever thought about the DEI question? And if you are a young white lieutenant sitting on your destroyer and you realize when you look around your wardroom, there are no Black people in my wardroom. And I know that still happens. I talk to friends of mine who I mentor people from all persuasions to this day. Okay, ask yourself, is that the way it should be? You look at the enlisted side and you say, well, it's pretty diverse in the crew, but how come the wardroom isn't? And then come on down to an NNOA meeting. Join us for one of our webinars. Getting part of the conversation. I've done that with folks at Naval Postgraduate School, and I thought it was greatly rewarding. We've expanded the diversity of our senior advisors. That's why I asked Ann Rondeau to join us, and she has as a senior advisor. That's why I asked John Ewan to join us, and he has as a senior advisor. Sonny Masso, and the list goes on. So I would ask that of the flag officers and have those conversations and be more inclusive. Over.
Yeah, I think that really resonates. That makes sense. Which fundamentally gets to, hey, do you believe in this mission, right? Do you believe in what NNOA stands for? And fundamentally, it decodes to, we absolutely believe in the power of differences, the combination of the power of difference and unity of effort, right? That fundamentally is our most compelling competitive advantage against our pacing competitor. And I mean that in a very real way. And so back to the question of the retired commander, everything Sink said, which is, yeah, broaden the membership. Let's work together to broaden the membership and say, hey, if you believe in this mission, if you believe in this outcome, then this is something we all need to get after and get behind. And NNOA serves an important role in stimulating that conversation and helping us work together.
Thank you so much, sir. So that's actually going to be our very last question. So as I said, thank you again for joining us. And I'll turn over to Admiral Harris for closing remarks.
So, Vice Chief, thank you so much. Shipmate, it's great to see you. I especially like seeing that plaque in the back with the 1 star. I'm assuming that's the one from, you know it,
That's it.
ESG-5, right?
Buddy, CTF 51 ESG-5, that's one of the best jobs in the Navy.
No kidding, especially being out there at the tip of the spear. But thank you so much for a clear, concise, to me, impactful discussion that not only the people that were online now, but the ones that, you know, will listen later on. We get a lot of people that listen to the recording later on will gain from it. I look forward to seeing you again next time I get a chance to darken the halls of the Pentagon. And I want to send you a personal invite to anything that you can join us for next year in Annapolis as NNOA celebrates its 50th anniversary.
Awesome. Yeah, congrats on that. I will definitely be there, Sink. And I think that last question was actually quite relevant to that as well, which is, hey, let's make that a real celebration of actually moving the needle. All right, we'll have a year of runtime, and we're going to test our self-talk. This structure, this approach, this data, are we moving the needle in powerful ways in DEI? And then to celebrate the 50th anniversary, what a great way to have that conversation. I really look forward to that. Hey, I want to wrap as well just by saying I really value these type of conversations. I think they're important. We're absolutely, completely aligned and locked on the power of differences, the power of making all our voices come alive is what is our true competitive advantage. So it's a warfighting imperative. And I appreciate, Sink, your leadership and the conversation today.
Thank you, sir. And now over to Jared.
All right, good morning, everybody. So now we're going to go into our award ceremony. For more information regarding these awards, it can be viewed at nnoa.org. First up, we have the Dory Miller Award. This is going to be presented to Lieutenant Cherise Fogel. Clap, clap. Number 2, the Captain Sal P. Kafer Mentoring Award. And this is going to be presented to Lieutenant Commander Celeste Young. The Distinguished Service Award is going to be presented to Lieutenant Christopher Munn. The Vice Admiral Manson Brown Outstanding Chapter President Award is going to be presented to Lieutenant Marion Sams. And finally, the Captain Charles L. Tompkins Service Award is presented to Chief Warrant Officer for Antonio Franklin. Congratulations to all of you for these well-deserved awards and recognition. And now we're going to go to a 5-minute break.